Hello everyone. Right now I'm going to show you the top 3 mistakes that beginners make when setting up a character in Unreal Engine, starting with the smallest and moving on to the most significant one that will have a bigger impact on the overall look of your model. For anyone who finds these tutorials useful and wants to keep improving, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling me what else you'd like to learn. All right, let's begin. Mistake number 3. Separate textures. I've seen a lot of work from beginners and even intermediate level artists who set up their models in Unreal Engine using multiple textures that each have just one color. For example, metallic, roughness, alpha, and ambient occlusion. It's not forbidden to do it that way, but it does make working with textures more complicated, especially if you have a lot of models in one project. It takes up more memory overall, and having so many textures can cause confusion. That's why you can combine them into a single file. You can do this in Photoshop, or if you paint your models in Substance Painter, you can save out a combined texture right from there. If you do it manually in Photoshop, all you need to do is load 3 separate textures into each RGB layer. Usually R is for Ambient Occlusion, G is for Roughness, and B is for Metallic. That way you have just one texture, but it contains 3 textures at once. For some models, people also include specular and curvature, but these are mostly used to create more realistic skin for monsters or humans. Now, I'll show you an example of how the material is set up using just one texture versus 3. Here's the version with 3 textures. And here's the version with a single texture. Mistake number 2, compression mode. Maybe you've already noticed or seen with other artists that models in the game engine can appear overly shiny. When you've painted your model and loaded all its textures, you might realize that the metallic and roughness effects don't look the way you intended. It all comes down to how you load your texture in Unreal Engine. The default compression setting is set to default, which considers the RGB parameters. But since our metallic, roughness, and ambient occlusion maps aren't really color textures, using sRGB can mess them up. That's why you need to disable sRGB and switch to masks, no sRGB. I've prepared several material examples to show you the difference. The first helmet has its textures set up perfectly with the masks mode enabled. As you can see, it uses a single texture with 3 channels. And we use its texture compression mode set to masks, no sRGB. Now, check out this helmet. It uses the same texture, but its compression setting is still on default. Let's take a closer look at its material. Even there, the texture appears a bit different. Now, if we compare the textures side by side, they look identical at first glance. One texture has its compression set to default, while the other is set to masks. They're the exact same textures, but because of the incorrect compression mode, the model ends up looking off. You might think this issue is due to using a combined texture. However, even if you use separate textures, the problem still occurs. Here's a helmet with a material using separate textures, and it still looks wrong. And here's what the correctly set up material should look like, just as I painted it. So why does this work? Without sRGB, the data stays accurate, resulting in fewer lighting errors. The mask's compression preserves details better. The roughness map retains all its fine variations. Plus, you can combine several maps into one, which saves video memory and reduces the number of render calls. This little detail can make a huge difference in making your models look so much better. Mistake number 1, not using instance materials. Often, material setup ends once you've simply added your textures and connected them, but that's not quite right. Instead, you can create 1 or 2 base materials and then build other materials as instances from them. Now I'll show you how to create a simple yet fully functional base material. First, here's our blank material. If you need 2-sided rendering, enable it right away. Next, load your textures into the material. Right-click on each texture and convert it into a parameter, giving it an appropriate name. Repeat this process for all your textures. Let's start with the base color. Create a multiply node by pressing M on your keyboard, or right-click on empty space and type in the node name. Connect the texture to the A channel. Then, create a scalar parameter by pressing S. Name it brightness. Set its default value to 1 and plug it into the B channel. This parameter allows you to make the texture brighter or darker. Now, let's add a power node. Connect our multiply node into it, then create another scalar parameter called contrast. This will give us the ability to adjust the texture's contrast. Plug it into the base color. Moving on, since I'm working with a combined texture, I'll handle each channel separately. Starting with the red channel, create a multiply node and a scalar parameter named AOInt for intensity. Parameter to B, set the default parameter value to 1. Connect the red channel of our texture to A, then plug the result into ambient occlusion. Next, create a lerp node by pressing Else on your keyboard. Plug in the green channel into the alpha channel and create two scalar parameters, roughness min for A and roughness max for B. Set both default values to 1 for now, and connect the result to the roughness channel of the material. Then, create another multiply node and a scalar parameter called metallic, set to a value of 1. Plug the blue channel into A, and the result goes into the metallic channel of the material. Now for the normal map. Create a flatten normal node, connect your normal texture into it, and add a scalar parameter called normal flatten with a default value of 0. Connect that to the material as well. Save your material. Then right-click on it and select Create Material Instance. Now, if you need a material for another piece of armor or a different model, you can simply swap out the textures in this window and it's ready to go. This also allows for more flexible texture adjustments, so you can achieve the perfect result, whether that means adjusting roughness or enhancing the normal texture. But it can get even better. You can create more complex materials with additional settings. Add dirt with any texture you find online, boost shadows from ambient occlusion, adjust saturation, or even change the color of each detail. If this video gets 50 likes and 10 comments, I'll record a separate video on creating such advanced materials that will add even more variety and quality to your models. And if you're interested, I can also record videos of the entire character creation process from start to finish. Thank you all for watching. Be better than you were yesterday. See you in the next video.